everybody. Hope you're well. Welcome to episode number 21 of Average Beer Dude TV. I'm Average Beer Dude. I am Chris. Thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Today we have a special one. I'm really looking forward to diving into this one today. This is Bit Brewing Company's My Neighbor Tartoro. 8-Bit Brewing Company is sort of a new brewery for me. I've only reviewed one of their beers in the 200 some odd reviews that I've done. And the first one I reviewed was quite solid. Figured I would make a trip up there just yesterday to see what they're up to, and I ended up coming home with this crawler. So this episode might be a little bit more lengthy than others. I'm not really sure. We'll see where we end up, but I'm going to kind of ramble on and see what happens. Talk a little bit about 8-Bit, dive into this beer, see what this beer is all about, and we'll go from there. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, a little bit about 8-Bit Brewing Company. Murrieta, California, 45 minutes or so north of San Diego, or North County, San Diego. Inland Empire, warm as fuck up there. Good beer up there, I suppose. Their little situations, I always think it's a little bit different than most just because they're a full restaurant as well as a brewery. So full operating brewery, full operating restaurant. They have a lot of space up there and they're rapidly expanding, I think, into like 3 suites in their building. So more to come from those guys, but they're just killing it right now. I'm not quite sure how long they've been open, but I do know they're gaining popularity quickly, mostly because their beers are getting much better, especially over the last 12 or so months. They got a new brewer. His name is Dan, and he's just murdering it up there. So special shout out to Dan. Keep doing what you're doing, man. A little bit more about this beer. I mentioned it's called My Neighbor Tartoro. For those of you that are familiar with what 8-Bit does, they actually name all their beers after like cartoons or video games. You can kind of tell by their branding, they're very video game-esque. This one's no different. This one is actually named after, I think it's called My Neighbor Totoro, which is a Japanese cartoon from, I believe, I want to say the late 80s, early 90s. I won't lie, I've never seen that shit, so I could just be making this all up, I don't know. Haven't talked a little bit about what this beer is and why this is a little bit of a special one. This one is actually a Sour IPA. This is the first ever Sour IPA that they've ever tried up at 8-Bit. In talking with Dan yesterday when I picked this up, he had mentioned that this is kind of a Hudson Valley-esque inspired beer. Yeah, so when he said that, I was like, I gotta go pick this shit up. I took the hike up there, snuck away from work, and obtained this thing. So I'm super pumped to try this. I had a little sip of it yesterday and it was actually really good. I didn't write much down about it. So this is sort of going in blind, but sort of not. At least I know it's good, right? So anyway, check a gander on that can art. If you're familiar with the cartoon, that's the cartoon right there. And then they got their branding, their little Pac-Man beer mug pixelated thingamajigger. They're kind of representing the 8-Bit piece of it. So all their branding is super on point when you see that all their stuff is named after like video games and stuff like that. All the art puts their little 8-Bit fella in there and kind of twists it around to match up with the video game. It's really cool stuff. So while I was up there, I picked up some proper glassware as well since I figured we'd do a video review of this one. A little bit more about this beer since I just mentioned what it was. Sour IPA, as I mentioned. It's dry hopped only, I believe. Mosaic, Idaho 7, Citra, and this one is actually conditioned on peaches as well. In talking with their brewer Dan yesterday, he had mentioned things were just a little bit not where he wanted them, so he ended up throwing those peaches in there, and I think that just put this beer over the top as far as being a super tasty beer. So yeah, let's go ahead and crack this thing open. We'll see what it's got. We'll see what it looks like, obviously. We'll describe what it smells like, what it tastes like, and I guess I can give this thing a rating too. Other thing I didn't mention, 6.5% ABV. So not like super crazy heavy, which is good because this thing's a 32 ouncer and I presume I'll be drinking this today. So see if I can get this bad boy popped open. These things are always so funky to pop open and they are full. See how much of this I spill. I don't know about you guys, but like anytime I have a crawler, I just fucking spill it everywhere. So you were warned. Didn't do too bad, a little bit of drips there, so I'm gonna let that settle just for a quick second, but you can kind of see in looking at it, it looks like just, peach juice, I guess. A nice billowing head of really dense foam, like that is some really frothy stuff. There's a few big bubbles in there. but it's retaining really nicely, and it's just, it looks really, really good. Let's get one more gander of that thing. Just straight up kind of turbid looking, you know, hazy if you want to call it that. All the haze lords will get excited about that, I suppose, but they don't mention anywhere on their menu this is like a hazy IPA. They have other hazy IPAs there that are phenomenal beers, so this one is specifically billed as a sour IPA. Let's take a sniff, see what we got. It's interesting. So I've had a couple Hudson Valley beers. That's what I'm going to keep comparing this beer to, just because those are the real sour IPAs that I'm familiar with, and those are fucking outrageously good. This one doesn't smell so like sour-esque. It definitely smells more, for me, kind of like a hazy IPA would smell. And what that means for me is I am getting some of that peach on the nose, that melony stone fruit, as well as some orange citrus, grapefruit. It's just really citrusy, really tropical. Hops are hitting in there really well. I'm not getting a lot of like hop resin or earthy hops or anything in there. It's just a lot of, just a lot of fruit, and that there's just that ever so slight tinge of tartness there from that sour part of this beer. So let's take a sip and see what we're working with here. I'm going to describe the mouthfeel first, just like always. Then we'll go into the taste. We'll see where we end up. That's good. Wow. Before I take another sip, I'm not going to chug this glass. Before I take another sip, creamy medium body. Just know that carbonation is there. It feels like kind of sour-esque, if you will, so the bright bubbly carbonation, but it's still pretty subtle. It sits in my mouth really easy, but just creamy and smooth really at the end of the day. For 6.5%, this has a phenomenal body. Usually I would expect it to be a little bit thinner, but no, this one is definitely medium and creamy. Dig it. Dig it a lot. Where do I even start? A lot of peaches. Definitely get that peaches taste in there. That stone fruity melon. But the big thing that I'm going to try to describe here, and I probably will fail miserably just because I don't drink a ton of sours, but this tastes like a sour to me. It is brewed like an IPA, conditioned kind of like a kettle sour, but this tastes like a sour. The second that hits your tongue, you get that kind of eruption of tartness that just blows up your taste buds and kind of makes you cringe a little bit. I love that stuff. I'm a huge fan of sour everything, so that hits you real quick. But once that kind of mellows out a little bit, that's when the peaches start rolling in, and then you sort of get the citrus bouquet of goodness there with the orange and the kind of grapefruit bitterness and things like that. But overall, man, this tastes a lot like a sour, which, it's always a mind fuck with these sour IPAs because they're brewed sort of like an IPA. I shouldn't say sort of, they are brewed like an IPA, but this tastes all sour to me. Yeah, that is just really damn good. I really can't believe this is Dan and 8-Bit's first shot at making a sour IPA. I know he said Hudson Valley was kind of the mecca of sour IPAs, is kind of what he was sort of trying to imitate, if you will, or create against. And while I know Dan will appreciate for me saying this, I don't think he nailed it 100%. I don't think he expected to nail it 100%, but this is really damn good. If I had to give this thing a rating, I would say on my rating scale, just because I don't have anything else 8-Bit sour IPA to compare to, a 4.5 out of 5 for sure. This is just a really, really phenomenal beer. It's just super, super unique. I can't get over this whole trend of these sour IPAs that are starting to pop up here in Southern California. I know on the East Coast, y'all are pumping these things out like crazy. You got people like Tired Hands, you got people like Hudson Valley, you got all kinds of people up there making sour IPAs now. Whereas this style is kind of new out here in Southern California. There's been a couple that I've had out here, and they were nowhere near as good as this in my opinion. I think the last one I had, and again, I'm not trying to talk trash here or anything, but was the Bottle Logic one. It was a hazy double IPA, sort of like a sour IPA. They didn't call it a sour IPA, so that's why it's sort of hard to compare apples to apples here. But that one was a little bit more beery, if you will, but still had a ton of fruit in it. That was a good beer, but this just as a sour IPA is just incredible. So I have, hats off for real to 8-Bit, to Dan, to all those guys up there that are doing the R&D. This stuff is super tasty. I'd love to hear what you all think about sour IPAs, especially those of you that drank them a little bit more than I had. You should let me know in the comments, and I'd love to chat it up about sour IPAs. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say today. Again, this is 8-Bit Brewing Company. Look them up, guys, at 8-Bit Brewing Company, or 8-Bit Brewing, on Instagram. You can find pretty much anything you want to know about those guys on their Instagram. They do a great job updating it. This is my neighbor, Tartoro. Sour IPA. I give this 2 thumbs up. A solid offering from those guys. If you like what you watched today, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe. That button should be popped up down here somewhere. Go ahead and click it, hit subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.